Planning to travel the UK by train? In this episode, Doug and I share the 15 most common mistakes we see travellers make and how you can avoid them. From ticket tips to travel day pitfalls, this is one you don't want to miss.
Welcome to the UK Travel Planning Podcast. Your host is the founder of the UK Travel Planning website, Tracy Collins. In this podcast, Tracy shares destination guides, travel tips, and itinerary ideas, as well as interviews with a variety of guests who share their knowledge and experience of UK travel to help you plan your perfect UK vacation. Join us as we explore the UK from cosmopolitan cities to quaint villages, from historic castles to beautiful islands, and from the picturesque countryside to seaside towns.
Hi, and welcome to episode 157 of the UK Travel Planning Podcast. So this week I am once again joined by Doug.
Hi everybody, great to be back.
Who is here as always to talk all things trains. Now, of those of you who are in our Facebook group or have done a consult with us or have followed along on a previous podcast, you will know that Doug worked in the UK rail industry for over 25 years and he's travelled on every single national rail train line across the country. So through our consultations, Facebook group and our ebook, we help thousands of travellers plan stress-free UK rail trips. And today we're sharing the 15 most common mistakes we see people make, especially if it's their first time.
That's right. Whether it's booking the wrong type of ticket or not considering the risk of travelling on a Sunday or just bringing way too much luggage. We've seen it all.
Yep. So stick around for this episode to find out what those mistakes are, those pitfalls are, and so you can avoid them and travel smarter. Now, and remember, if you want more help, we've got our guide to UK train travel ebook, which Doug wrote.
I did.
And we have personalised itinerary consultations with Doug to help make your planning easier. And I will put links in the show notes to both of those so you can find the ebook. And if you want, book a session with Doug to help you plan your rail itinerary around the UK. So we're going to go through each of the 15 mistakes one by one and have a little bit of a discussion about why it's a mistake and what you can do to fix it. So the first mistake that we see people doing is getting too much advice from non-experts online.
That's true. If I had £1 for every time I have heard somebody told me, or I've seen somewhere, or I've just read somewhere, such and such, I would be very rich by now. The problem is, of course, you can overload with information. There can be too much information. And unfortunately, there's a lot of information out there that is incorrect, inaccurate, partly or completely wrong. And so a lot of people are overwhelmed before we've even heard from them.
Yeah, that is true.
They're posing questions and you can hear in what they write down, but you can actually it comes across as they are totally overwhelmed, completely overwhelmed.
Stressed out. And actually, I will say at this point as well that, and we do say this actually quite a lot on the Facebook group as well, is that we will see the same query about travel generally in the UK, and it will be put in 5 different Facebook groups. Now, and what happens is you get, 50 responses, and it becomes really, really confusing. And, it's important. Doug has a specific, you have a Facebook group just for train travel.
And that's right. I encourage people to join that one because that is myself, and I have 2 moderators also involved in the rail industry in the UK. We have that great knowledge between the 3 of us, myself and my 2 friends, the moderators. We cover every single aspect of UK passenger travel. And what I don't know, they know. And what they don't know, I know. And we've covered it. So many times questions have come up, and we've not had yet, touch wood, had a question that one of us has not known the answer to.
So that's it kind of reinforces that. Don't ask or try to get information from people who don't necessarily know about the rail industry. Go to the Facebook group, or Doug's written a book. Yeah,
I've written the ebook, A Guide to UK Train Travel, which covers everything you need to know. Plain and simple. It covers everything you need to know. And a lot of the information that's out there, people read, hear, speak about, is well-intentioned, and I'm not questioning that. But what I am questioning is a lot of the content is inaccurate or out of date. So yes, you need to be talking to the experts.
And obviously you also offer an itinerary consult as well. So I know we do a video one. So if somebody has questions or they've got an itinerary and they just want a bit of fine tuning and want to ask you questions about traveling the UK by train, you can do a video consult. So you send us your itinerary and then Doug will record a video response to you and send it back to you, also with a Google Doc with information in it. If you want access, Doug, you can book a one-to-one session.
Yeah, that's right. I don't bite. I'm quite normal. And believe it or not, Tracy will back me up. I thoroughly enjoy talking about trains, so that is not a problem.
Yeah, so absolutely, he loves to do that. So that's the first problem, but we've solved it for you. So we will put links to all of those resources in the website. And of course, don't forget, we do have other podcast episodes about train travel. And we also have the website where we have a whole train section. So do make use of all that. We also, if you subscribe to our newsletter, you will receive information about train travel. So we've got a huge amount of resources that you can use. Just stick with us. We know what we're talking about. We know all about train travel.
That's it. We'll see you right.
Right. So now the second mistake we see people make, and this is one I know you talk about all the time in the Facebook group. So tell us what it is.
Yes. It's Sunday travel, plain and simple. The Sunday train travel in the UK is at best unreliable. At best unreliable. You have some good days where things will work entirely to plan, but over many, many, many years of myself travelling and commuting to and from work, Sundays was always the day that created most problems. It's a question of risk. The risk on a Sunday of engineering work impacting your journey. The risk on a Sunday of being short-staffed. The risk on a Sunday of diversions and cancellations is much higher than the other 6 days. So unless you're travelling a shorter distance, really not the best of ideas to travel on a long distance, because the trains for some bizarre reason are also very full, because on a Sunday timetable there is less trains running on that day, and so it stands to reason there's going to be more people travel.
Yeah,
but it's not the ideal day to travel, because as engineering works, they have to work at some point. I was involved with this myself, overnight work, and overnight work can be on a Friday, Saturday and Sunday night, and sometimes it overruns. Sometimes it goes into a Saturday, goes into a Sunday. So Sunday is the day where the risk is highest of cancellations and delays. So if it's possible in your itinerary to avoid the Sunday travel, do so. Now, I have to add to that, it goes without saying, sometimes it is unavoidable. Sometimes you have no choice. Sometimes you've just got to do it. But in that case, I would advise try and travel in the middle of the day. Make sure you book your seat reservations and other things which will come across mistakes that people make. But do a search. The topic of conversations regarding Sunday travel, I have covered so many times on our Facebook groups, haven't I?
I think it's the most common thing that we comment on when people ask a question, or when in fact you've solved that problem many times when we've done itinerary consults, when people are trying to juggle days and we'll go, no, try and avoid particularly a long trip on a Sunday, because potentially it can be problematic. And I know when we've spoken in trip reports, when people have had problems, it is tended to be around the Sunday travel.
It is, because I think what people do in their itineraries, they see Sunday as a nice convenient day for travelling between places.
Yeah.
And it's a nice easy day for travel. Sometimes it can be on the roads. Certainly, it can be less travel, less people travelling. But Sunday by train is the day I would avoid.
Okay, I think we've covered that one really well. So that's a mistake, travelling on a Sunday. And the workaround is to try and avoid travelling on a Sunday if possible, or like Doug says, the middle of the day, those sort of strategies to put in place. Tip number 3, or mistake number 3, I should say, is bringing too much luggage. And I know this can be really, really difficult, but honestly, I think you really need to consider, if you're planning a train itinerary around the UK, is to consider how much luggage you're going to have.
Yeah, so it's easy to bring too much luggage, because if you can carry a lot more luggage than the next person, you're not carrying too much luggage, plain and simple. But it has to be what you can safely and manage and lift onto trains and put onto luggage racks and stacks or behind seats. So it's what works for you, plain and simple, really. But because, there is limited space on board trains, and particularly the trains full. Train stations themselves, we know from our own experiences that the lifts and the escalators may not be working.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you have to be prepared to be able to lift your luggage if need be.
Yeah, considering if you've got to take it upstairs, you've got to take it downstairs. Are you going to be able to do that? Are you going to be able to lift it onto the train, get it off the train?
Yeah.
So that's something that we consider really carefully. Now, there is I guess one thing we would recommend, for example, if you're starting your itinerary in London and ending your rail itinerary in London, you could actually leave some of your luggage in a left
definitely.
luggage in London or in a hotel if you're going back to the same hotel. And we've done that in numerous destinations around the world.
We have done that.
So that is a possibility, but just try. I just know that as you travel, the further you travel, when you've got too much luggage, whatever that looks like for you, the luggage just becomes a pain. It just becomes something that is just so stressful. It's awful.
It is true. And the reality is, the less you carry, the more enjoyable your rail experience.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. So mistake number 4 that we see is not booking assistance if you need it or leaving it too late.
That's right. There is a great passenger assist system set up in the UK, and it works very, very well. But what you do need to have, you need to make sure you book that assistance at least really 24 hours in advance. Okay, so the assistance that you book, it takes the form of assistance with a member of staff helping you on board the train and getting off the train, helping you to your seat, making sure your luggage is stowed correctly and you're comfortable. Plain and simple. Make sure you are comfortable before the train goes, before the train leaves. So that if that means you're able to walk and they'll just help you with your mobility to get on board and onto your seat, or it's actually physical assistance with a wheelchair, in which case ramps are used to board trains. So, but the secret there is, A, is to be aware that you do need assistance and acknowledge the fact, and B, is actually book it in good time. There's a very good page on National Rail Enquiries, actually gives all the phone numbers you could possibly need to arrange that.
Okay, so we'll link to that in the show notes as well. What about if I was arriving at a station and then I had to change platforms and get onto another train? Will they help assist with that?
Yeah, that's all part of the booking in advance. You'll include your rail itinerary, and so what they'll say is somebody will meet you in, say, the station concourse at the first station, and they will help you board that train. They'll take you to the platform, wait with you until that train comes in, and then they'll help you board the train. And then you stay in your seat when the train arrives at your next station, and somebody with a ramp will be there to meet you. They'll know exactly which door or which carriage you are sitting in, so they'll help you out to that one and onto your next train as well. Sometimes if you're using multiple train operators, that is all aligned through the National Rail Enquiries, they will be communicating with the next service.
And is that a free service?
That is a free service.
Okay, so that's a great one to use. If you need assistance, make sure that you book it.
Yeah, it's important to have your rail tickets purchased in advance of booking the assistance.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, it's 24 hours is what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, you can risk it later or closer to, but really as a rule of thumb, 24 hours is really when you need to make sure that help is in place.
Okay, cool. Right, so mistake number 5 we see is not exploring the different ticket types and not being aware of all available rail cards or passes, because these can save you a lot of money if you know about them.
That is true, and I do have a lot of sympathy. It's taken me years to fully understand all the different ticket types, the National Rail Cards availability, and the types of, say, Brit Rail passes. There's a lot there, and there's a lot to take on board, and there's a lot to get your head around when you're doing your research. So it comes back to that same point. Talk to the experts. Talk to us. No question you ask as regards ticketing, we have not experienced before. And as I say, with help of the 2 other moderators in our train group, we can answer every single question. There's nothing that's going to be asked that we have not encountered before.
Well, there does seem to be a bit of confusion. I know when we've had questions about the Brit Rail pass, and then people are talking about then booking a ticket.
That's right. That comes up quite often, doesn't it? Yeah. So they've done that level of research, and quite possibly, as we said on the first part, is they've talked to somebody, they've read somewhere, under the impression of that, you buy the Britrail and then you've got to go and buy more tickets, which sort of defeats the object of having a Britrail.
It'd be a very expensive way to do things.
Yeah, it's those little things that we take for granted as being obvious. But if you don't know, it's not obvious at all.
Well, it's also if you don't know what you don't know necessarily. But I think that there does seem to be a lot of confusion around that. And I know you've just recently published an article on the website explaining that.
Yeah, that's right. So just to sort of clarify as to how Britrail Pass, for example, works, how you validate it, and what coverage of the Great Britain it actually includes. And
now, what about information about the different rail cards? I know that you've included those in your ebook.
Yeah, that's right. There's quite a few different types of National Rail card, and they are mostly for one year, albeit there is additional ones for 3 years. And the price of that is £35 if you qualify. There's so many different types. There's 2 Together rail card. There's Friends and Family rail card. There's the Senior rail card. And not to mention the student rail cards as well, because these are available for people not just in the UK.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. I was going to say, is that if I live in America or live in Australia like we do, or live in New Zealand or live in Singapore, can I get access to those?
Yeah, you can. You can buy these online before you arrive. And so what the National Rail cards tell you to do, you still buy your train tickets, but you are listing the fact you have a rail card already, and that'll give you a third off the ticket price. Which is really good.
I remember actually you were doing a small YouTube video about how to use that, how to actually purchase a ticket from the train line if you actually have already got a rail card.
Yeah, that's right.
Because that's something else we often get asked in consults when we say about, well, you could qualify, you could buy this rail card. Then there's a bit of confusion about then purchasing a rail ticket, and then how do you kind of get the discount?
That's right. And some of the websites for purchasing the tickets, they're not the most straightforward. So like the YouTube videos that we have, they explain that visually.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're looking at these websites and you're looking all around it and you just can't find what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So you need somebody to help signpost you to exactly where you need to be.
So I will put a link to that YouTube video as well into the show notes. Now, okay, mistake number 6 is not arriving at the station early enough. And I can attest this one on my sister a few years ago, who arrived with not enough time to spare, thought she had to get to the station as the time the train was leaving, and she kind of waved it bye-bye on the platform. Yeah. So this one is something that you talk about all of the time, isn't it, about arriving in time?
Yeah, it's one of those things that sounds very, very simple, and we would always do it, but no, it's so easy to underestimate the time it takes you to get to that station, whether it's public transport or relying on other people. But also, when you get to the station, some stations in the UK, as they are around the world, they are huge.
Yeah, it's really complicated.
If you've got multiple entrances and exits, if you arrive into that main station concourse area, departure area, you don't know where to go. It's now what? What do we do? So you've got to make sure you allow yourself so much time, especially if you've got plenty of luggage or travelling with others that might need some assistance or children. You've just got to allow that added time to get there. I mean, you may be wanting to go to the shops as well to buy some refreshments. So you just got to allow plenty of time to get there. And the other thing is, there's a security element to that as well. You need to be on the ball. You need to be paying attention to what you're doing. So, yeah, the big stations, or all stations really, but particularly the big stations in London like King's Cross, Waterloo, Victoria, Euston, give yourself a lot of time to get there.
Also, I was going to say about that, is there a website that I can see a plan for each of the train stations?
Yeah, there certainly is. The National Rail Enquiries is a very, very good resource when it comes to looking at station layouts, whether that's entrances, where the taxi rank is, where the shops are, where the toilets are, where the ramps are for any accessibility, to aid accessibility, if there's lifts anywhere as well. It's an incredible, very good resource. Every time I look at the National Rail Enquiries, I seem to find something different. And it is the one go-to site if you need specific station information, because I'm going to put my neck on the line. I think the station information for every single station in Great Britain,
Oh, wow.
I think they have. I mean, some stations are bigger than others, obviously, but I think even my local station where I'm from, Burton-on-Trent, it's got all the information there.
Yeah, I think I've checked that before, and it tells you things like if taxis are available
That's
and
right.
all
If
that
there's
sort of
luggage
information.
lockers, is
Yeah.
there toilets? Is there disabled toilets there?
So that's an amazing resource
It really
to
is.
tap into.
Yeah.
And also, we do have an article about London's main train stations as well on our londontravelplanning.com website, which has got photographs of the different stations as well. So it's worth also checking out that article. Now, mistake number 7 that we see is not reserving a seat on long distance journeys. Now, I highly recommend that you do this because sometimes, honestly, the trains can get incredibly full and you do not want to end up standing.
That's right. Seat reservations are free to make in the UK. When you buy a ticket online through different operators or open access companies, they should come with the option to make a seat reservation. But if you're arriving at a train station and it's very busy, because let's face it, most of the London terminal stations are very busy. So when the platform opens for people to be able to move down towards the train, there can be a bit of a rush. And if you've got a seat reserved already, you can go at your own safe pace. And it is so much worth it. It gives you peace of mind. If you've got a preference to which side of the train you want to sit on, what are the key things to see en route, which is all information on our website as well. We cover that. It just makes for a whole all-round better rail experience. If you've got your seat there, you've got your seat preferences that you prefer. And a very important one there is most people, myself included, rather sit and face the direction of travel. And if you're just chancing to a seat, which again you can do if that's your preference, you could be sitting anywhere.
And you can reserve a table as well if you want to keep your
That's right.
group together.
Yeah, that's right. It's whatever your preference is. But for a long distance journey, and by long distance I mean anything really over 2 hours, I would certainly be looking to make a seat reservation.
Well, I'll just have a little anecdote on this one. I actually travelled from Edinburgh down to London in, I think it was February. And I did have a reservation, but I decided to go on an earlier train because I'd finished doing what I was doing about 3 hours before. So I managed to get onto the train beforehand, but I did not have a seat reservation and it was absolutely packed. It was so full. Now, I somehow miraculously managed to pick a seat that even though it had reserved on it, nobody jumped on it to take the reserved seat up. But believe me, every time I pulled into a station where there was a change of reservation, because it was a long trip, so the seats had been reserved numerous times, I was stressed out to the max because I thought, if somebody gets on and they've got this seat, where am I going to go and sit?
That's right.
So, even I've made that mistake before. So it's free to make a train reservation, honestly, to get your seat. So just do it.
That's right.
Just do it.
Yep, and it makes for great peace of mind. If you purchased a Brit Rail Pass, for example, and if you know all the trains and your rail itinerary, just make all the reservations when you arrive. You can go to any staff train station and make your seat reservations.
And you've done that before. I know we've helped people in consults who've talked about that and given that tip. Yeah,
and the feedback we've had, that has worked so well. And I also have to point out, if you plan on catching a certain train and for whatever reason you don't catch that train, if you've got a Brit Rail Pass, for example, jump on the next one. That's not a problem. Go make another seat reservation. It doesn't matter.
Okay, so mistake number 8 is not using helpful apps properly. And we've just actually spoke about the National Rail Enquiries app, which I know you just think is a game changer.
I think the National Rail Enquiries, particularly their live trains function, is absolutely fantastic. And it frustrates me a little, that people do not use that more often, because you could be on one train and you're making a connection and you want to know if your train that you're catching is on time or even from which platform, and you can look at that one and you can find that information. You know which platform you're going to. Okay, yes, you need to double check that as well, but you know if it's running on time, and that can make life so much easier. I mean, I could use an anecdote as well for that one. On my last visit, going from Birmingham New Street, the connection I was making, the train was about 20 minutes late. So once I arrived at Birmingham Moor Street, I was going to walk up to Birmingham New Street. I didn't need to rush. I knew that the train I was catching was running a little late. So I sort of strolled in nice and leisurely onto the platform, which hadn't changed. And yeah, it makes life so much easier. Use the information that's there. Use the tools that are available. That's the National Rail Enquiries live trains app. Trainline also very, very good. And then in London, the TfL, the Transport for London, they have the Go app, which is fantastic when it comes to journey planning, and also how each service or different lines, how they're working at that moment in time. Use the information that's there. It can make such a difference.
Absolutely. And the train line we do recommend. It's just because it keeps all your train tickets in the same place. It's just easier and more organised.
That's right, yeah. The train line is a very good one to use if you don't know the individual train operators in the UK, because, there's over 22 of them. And then you've got the open access companies as well. And you wouldn't know which operators operate on which line. So the train line, everything's under one hat, and you can just go through that way.
Perfect. Okay, so mistake number 9 we see people making is not planning for food or drink on board. Now, you need to remember that not all trains have a catering trolley or buffet service, especially on Sundays. And we've actually been on trains as well where the trolley has not actually been able to make it to our carriage because it's been so busy.
So busy, that's right. So when I said earlier about getting to the station in time, get there in plenty of time, but also stock up. Most of the large stations, all the ones in London, have Marks and Spencer's or WH Smith's. They have shops there that you can go and fill up and get some food and drink. There's a bottle of water is an absolute minimal, because I've also been on trains many, many times, not just the UK, all around the world, when it's been delayed, it stops, doesn't move, all times of the year. And even in the middle of winter, inside those trains, especially if they're busy, it can get very, very hot.
It's true.
So always make sure you have a backup drink.
Planning a trip to London, if you're looking for tours that are well organised, full of interesting stories and a pleasure to take part in, I can't recommend Walks and Devour tours enough. I've done several myself, from famous landmarks to amazing food tours, and every single one has been a real highlight. Their guides are great storytellers who make the city feel alive. The team really cares about the details and puts a lot of thought into making each experience feel special, comfortable and full of those "I'm so glad I did this" moments. You can find all my favourite tours at uktravelplanner.com/best London tours. And also, it's a good idea to take a reusable water bottle, because I know many places now there are free kind of water refill places.
That's right. Yeah, environmentally friendly. There's lots of water refill stations.
I know in Birmingham New Street we saw one, in London Euston's got probably most of the stations now.
A lot of stations have these now.
So you can just refill your water bottle before you get on the train.
I do that then.
You do, yeah. Okay, so then tip number 10, or mistake number 10, we'll give you the tip, is not keeping an eye on your belongings.
Well, that's true. And, I do have a lot of sympathy with this one, because it is so easy to take your eye off all your luggage. You're in an unfamiliar surroundings. You're not familiar with the stations. You're not familiar with the station departure boards and how they work, particularly if you're an overseas traveller to the UK. And English may not necessarily be your first language as well. So it's so easy to take your eye off, particularly in large stations, in the departure halls. So, but unfortunately, we have stories of this, don't we?
Yeah,
people feed this back to us,
where things have been stolen. Unfortunately, train stations throughout the world are somewhere where criminals will hang out to try and steal your belongings. So they're pickpockets, and if they see that you're stressed or confused, and it's busy, or it just, although it's a perfect mix, unfortunately, for somebody to take your bag or to pickpocket you. So we always recommend. I mean, I use a crossbody bag. You use a crossbody bag, don't you?
I do.
I have a lanyard for my phone, just so then it keeps my hands free as well, so that I can be moving the suitcases around if we've got suitcases.
But we have a tried and tested method, don't we?
Yeah,
when we're traveling together.
We do, yeah.
And so what we always do is have the conversation before we arrive, which one of us is watching the luggage at all times and which one of us is looking at the departure board. And, Tracy and I, we both have also travelled independently. So what I do, and Tracy does as well, when you arrive at the station, is try and stand a little away with your back to the wall, somewhere you can physically watch all your luggage at the same time as looking at a departure board. It's so easy to, or if you're not easily able to do that, go and talk to station staff, ask them for assistance.
Yeah, and it's just really important. Make sure you know where your belongings are. Keep your most, precious things on you in your bag. I always use a travel on backpack or a pack safe backpack or crossbody bag. I've been using them for years. We've got, between the two of us, we've got I don't know how many, but we just find that it gives you a little bit more peace of mind that when you're having to concentrate on lots of things at the same time,
it's easy to be distracted.
Yeah, you don't have to worry too much about like having to have your hand on absolutely everything because it's kind of safely in your bag. But really, don't take your eye off your belongings. It's a mistake if you do that. And not guarantee that something's going to happen, but I would just say,
just be aware.
Just be aware. Same actually on the train, because we do, once we're on a train, we will keep an eye on where our suitcases are.
Most certainly, yeah. I always, if possible, try, and if I've already got a seat reserved, I try and board the train so I'm facing my luggage if I'm putting it in luggage racks at the end of the carriage or on the overhead racks as well, that run the length of the train. And also, because I'm a great advocate for using the luggage space behind seats as well and closer to it. Ideally right behind me so I can put my hand on my suitcase now and again. I can keep my eye on if other people try and push luggage on top of it, which we've all seen. So just keep your eye on it, stay on the ball. Stay on the ball. Yeah.
Okay, so then mistake number 11 we see is relying on onboard Wi-Fi to stay connected.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, even the new trains, the new posh, bright and shiny, fast trains, their Wi-Fi can still be a little bit patchy, particularly at high speed, particularly in rural areas, and really, obviously in tunnels as well. But it works best at stations. So really, the idea is to not rely on it and have your own Wi-Fi device.
Yeah, but even then, to be honest, you can lose. I've found that you lose signal, and so you need to be prepared, because I have seen. There's a couple of things that I've seen happen on trains. Is that a ticket collector will come around, and the person can't. There's no signal. They can't get access to the ticket.
Yeah.
And I've also seen a situation where the phone the battery had died and they couldn't switch the phone on. So there's a couple of suggestions you've got for that.
Yeah, the ideal one is to download your tickets so you're not relying on a signal, but also take a screenshot of it.
Yeah.
And even if you do that, if your phone runs out of juice, you can have a problem. So make sure you take a power bank with you.
Yeah, we always do that. Make sure you actually, and this is something that Doug always reminds me, is make sure that your power bank is charged.
I was next thing I was going to say, having a power bank is one thing, but making sure it's charged is another.
Yeah, I kind of depend on Doug to remind me on that one, because you said, have you got the power bank? I'm like, yeah, I've got a power bank. Is it charged? Yeah. Maybe not. But if you are going to use onboard Wi-Fi, it's worth also just mentioning that, that is an unsecure network. So make sure you have a VPN if you are going to connect to public networks, because that will protect your private data. The last thing you want is somebody hacking in when you're, checking out your bank or even on Facebook having a look, because and that's why you need a VPN. You don't want to be on a public network.
Most definitely. I mean, a lot of the new trains do have charging sockets and USBs or whatever, but don't depend on it, because wherever you travel in the UK, there is still some older trains out there, older coaching stock, which really does have nothing available for public use.
Okay, so let's go on to mistake number 12, is not planning the onward journey from the station.
Yeah, and this is thing that we've experienced many times when we've done the itinerary consult. Someone's going from Edinburgh to London or London to Edinburgh, and the catching X train arrives at X or Y time, and you say, well, how are you going to get to your hotel? Well, I've not thought of that. We're not even considered that.
Yeah, it's making sure that you plan that onward once you actually arrive at the station, you still got the rest of your journey to go. And if you're arriving somewhere at night or somewhere a bit more
definitely.
rural,
Yeah.
and we often get asked a lot. I know what comes up a lot is actually going out to Highclere. They could go to Highclere Castle, Downton Abbey.
Yep.
Is getting
Newbury.
the train from London to Newbury, and then we get asked a lot. And actually, we've got it in the article. Yes, there are taxis outside Newbury train station, but you don't know that, do you? You don't know, which is why we get asked. So we don't know that before you go, and you might not know that for any train station.
Yeah, so a little bit of preparation work, a bit of research, talking to the experts, we'll give you that advice.
Yeah, we do that research, don't we?
Yeah, I mean, if you're arriving late tonight into the middle of London and your accommodation is 50 minutes away, it's a good idea to have something already planned.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's something that we always check out, and we know what we're doing, especially because you don't know if the train might be delayed.
That's right.
Or, you might arrive and it's, 10:30 at night, and you've got to then find your accommodation. Know exactly how you're going to get there.
Most definitely. And also that makes a peace of mind as well, because it can be quite stressful if you're arriving into a new town or city you've not been to before, and you've got to get somewhere a long way away. It can be quite stressful.
Okay, so mistake number 13 is not exploring all route options. Now, I'm definitely going to get Doug to explain this because he's the expert on this.
That's right. I mean, we've done a podcast on this before, and all the different routes between London and Edinburgh, for example, in Scotland. But because the East Coast, for example, is the fastest way to get there between the two cities, they don't explore all the other options. So whenever I'm doing a planning a journey, not just the UK, but anywhere, we do like circular trips, don't we?
Yeah, we do. We want to see go a different route and see different things.
Yeah, and agreed, it may not necessarily be the quickest, most straightforward, but sometimes, for example, in the UK, you can go the East Coast Main Line, you can go via York to Edinburgh, and then when you come back, you can maybe stop off on the West Coast Main Line and go to the Lake District.
Yeah, so you've got different options.
Yeah,
but I think, and we see that quite often, and it depends on time. Like if you're on a rush, we understand that you maybe want to go on the East Coast Main Line because it takes you straight up there and back down again. But honestly, if you have the time, it's worth exploring the route options.
That's right.
Because you've got there's some great train routes that you can take.
That's right. So I mentioned the East Coast Main Line and the West Coast Main Line. I also like taking the cross-country route I do. Not just because it goes through my hometown, but also you're going through like the industrial Midlands, and it's just seeing something different. It's not, let's say, not the fastest, but it just gives you a whole different perspective and context of the UK. Yeah.
Perfect. So mistake number 14 we see is not giving enough time or leaving enough time for connections between trains.
Yeah, that's right. And if you're putting a search in, well, I use the example, if I'm going into Birmingham from Birmingham Moor Street, and I'm changing at Birmingham New Street, and then for journeys to Newcastle, they will just plot in their whole journey route from the starting point to the end point without realising you can change that time between connections.
On what?
If you're using National Rail Enquiries, or even if you're using the train line or any others, if you split your journey up, if you don't know how to actually change your transfer time between trains, you can always do your search as individual or split the journey.
Okay, so you could work out, so if I wanted to go, I don't know, from, say, London to York, and then I wanted to then go from York to Liverpool, I'm just throwing ideas out here. Instead of doing it London to Liverpool, I can just do London to York, and then York to Liverpool.
That's right.
And then I can decide I want, say, 2 hours in York, or 5 hours in York, or 10 minutes in York, or whatever.
Exactly. And you can set that time yourself, because if you feel rushed between platforms, you know this, you'll give an example in a second. That's what, escalators and lifts are dangerous places. And I've seen people fall or trip over suitcases. And so you've got to give yourself a safety net.
Yeah.
You've got to put that time between platforms as much as safely you can walk it or transfer between the two.
Well, because I refuse to run. I refuse point blank to run when we have to change trains. I fell a few years ago, and since then I've just said, no, I'm not rushing. So Doug knows that we have to have a reasonable amount of time. Now, only you will know what is a reasonable amount of time for you to go between, give yourself the time to go between the platforms. What I just want to be sure of and clear of here, Doug, though, is where do I put this time that I want? So if I want to have a 20-minute, so I understand that I can book each of the legs, so I can put in London, York to Liverpool, for example. But if I want to do the whole thing and I put it in, and we're talking here National Rail Enquiries, if I put in London to Liverpool and I wanted time in York, where do I put that? Is that on the actual
it's
on the website?
Yeah, it's on the website and on the app. You can set it transfer time for short, medium time or long time. You can actually specify exactly how long you want it to be.
How many minutes?
In intervals, yes.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's really useful. Well, that is a really good one. And I usually depend on Doug to sort our connections out. But I know, and we have been asked numerous times, actually, and you've been asked a lot in the Facebook group recently about, do I have enough time to get, even changing train stations in London? Have I got time to go from London to King's Cross and then I've got to go to St Pancras to catch a train? I've got 5 minutes. Is that going to be enough time? Well, we can tell you straight away that wouldn't be. And Doug's the expert. He will know that sort of information. So it is worth asking if you're unsure. But again, I think it's calculating yourself what
works for you.
What would work for you?
There's one thing in the example you've just given. When a train arrives, say a train is due to arrive at 10:30 and it pulls in at 10:30, in some scenarios, it can be 10 minutes before you've even left the train.
That is true. That is absolutely true. Yeah.
If
it's a lot of people on that train, and everybody's trying to get off,
particularly at a terminus station.
Like, and then you've got to show your ticket to get off the platform.
Right. Then you've got to orientate yourself when you get off there. But, before you've even actually walking out of the station concourse, you can be talking 15 minutes.
Yeah, that's true. So you've got to take that into consideration. So I know we've given you the mistake. We've given you lots of options to think about with that. But make sure that if you are having to do a connection on train, that you give yourself enough time, even if it's just changing platforms.
That's it. But do not rush.
Now, mistake number 15, and we this comes up a lot in consults, actually, and I think this is probably where this came from when we were kind of talking about what were the mistakes that we hear most often or come across, and that is booking a flight out of the UK, particularly from Heathrow, on the same day as you're taking a long train journey. For example, getting down from Edinburgh to London in the morning and then flying out in the afternoon, or even taking the Caledonian sleeper, say from Inverness, and then leaving the following morning, flying out. We never, ever, ever recommend doing that.
No, we almost cringe when we read or hear about that.
Well, it stresses me out.
Yeah. I mean, it's just too much of a risk.
It's the risk,
It really is too much of a risk. I mean, there was one a couple of weeks ago. Someone was actually travelling on a Sunday from Edinburgh. They were flying out of Gatwick in London, and they were planning on travelling down early Sunday morning. And I answered the question. This was in the Facebook group. I went, probably not the best of ideas.
No, definitely not.
No.
That would just stress me out. Even just you telling me about it stresses me out. And I mean, we know on the Caledonian sleeper, because again, we do hear people think, all right, I'll tell you what, we'll get the Caledonian sleeper on the Monday night, arrive in London on the Tuesday, and then I'll get the plane out on the Tuesday afternoon.
It's a nice plan.
But I mean, we just know this week, for example, the Caledonian sleeper didn't make it up to Inverness.
No, a tree fell on the line and damaged the overhead cables.
Yeah, so can you imagine how stressed you would be if you were coming down from Inverness to catch a flight that next day and you didn't get down to Inverness?
I mean, fully understand it. If your itinerary is packed and you're short for time and you want to enjoy an extra day somewhere, I totally understand. I totally understand the motive behind it. But you've got to think, if you miss that flight out, you're creating a lot more problems for yourself.
Yeah, well, a lot more costs, which again is why if you have an itinerary consult with us, it will be something we would advise on, and we have advised on this numerous times and looked at itineraries and changing things around so that you have maybe the last couple of days in London, so then you're not stressing out, or Edinburgh or wherever you're flying out from, so that you don't have, or you are much closer to the airport on the last couple of days rather than kind of depending on
Well, when we do the itinerary consults, we always streamline everybody's itinerary. We usually save them time and money anyway. Don't we?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's what we aim to do. And we always get fantastic feedback on the consultation, which I will say are open at the minute. So if you are considering a consult, there are bookings available, and we're actually just going to start a waiting list as well. So if you want to put your name on the waiting list, and then we'll send you an email when they do open, because we don't offer them all year round because of our own kind of things that we've got to do. But you can do that, your own commitment. But I think we've covered pretty much kind of those top 15 mistakes that we hear about and giving you the solutions. So we hope that you feel more confident about planning your UK rail adventure.
Yeah, I mean, they're all easy to fix, once you know what to look out for.
Yeah, for sure. Now, if you want to dig deeper, as I said, Doug's Guide to UK Train Travel ebook will walk you through everything: tickets, routes, apps, passes, some scenic journeys to do, some fantastic train journeys to do in the UK. And it also includes itineraries. I think there's 12 itineraries that you developed, train itineraries already done for you in that ebook.
Yeah, definitely. And if you'd like help plan your specific itinerary, I offer one-to-one consultations where I can map it all out for you, saving you time, money, and stress.
And we're also inviting you to join our free Facebook group, which is run by Doug, which said UK Train Travel Tips. And you've got thousands of people in that group now.
I really have a few thousand.
Yeah, so that's good. And he's always there answering questions, sharing tips, and giving out advice every week with you and your moderators, which is great. I will put links in the show notes to the Facebook group, the ebook, Doug's itinerary consult. So that's it, uktravelplanning.com/episode 157. As I said, we also have plenty of other podcasts about train travel as well as articles on the website. So do check that out. As always, thanks for your support. Thanks for listening to this episode. And that just leaves Doug and I to say until next week.
Happy UK travel planning!
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the UK Travel Planning Podcast. As always, show notes can be found at uktravelplanning.com. If you've enjoyed the show, why not leave us feedback via text or a review on your favourite podcast app? We love to hear from you, and you never know, you may receive a shout out in a future episode. But as always, that just leaves me to say, until next week, happy UK travel planning.